Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Lee, President of the American Federation of Teachers, New Mexico. I'm very proud to welcome each of you to participate on tonight's call. Over the next 75 minutes, you will have the opportunity to hear directly from our New Mexico legislative leaders in two separate formats. First, we will hear from Senate Majority Leader Peter Wirth and Speaker of the House Brian Egoff about their chamber's priorities for public education in New Mexico, from early education through higher education, and also detail some of their positions on labor issues and workers' rights. The second portion of tonight's call will be a series of issues and questions submitted by our AFT New Mexico members who are educators and who are currently working in our schools and institutions of higher education. During this portion, we will hear from other lawmakers about some of their ideas on the important issues and any legislation they plan to introduce to address these critical topics. In addition to the dozens of questions already submitted by AFT New Mexico members from across the state, if you think of a question during the call, please email it to AFT NM Tele-town Hall @gmail.com. That is AFT NM Tele-town Hall @gmail.com. If there is time, we will try to work in additional questions submitted via email. In addition to moderating tonight's call, I get to be the timekeeper. We want to be respectful of your time as well as the time of our legislators. Before we begin to hear from our candidates, we encourage you to press 1 now on your phones in order to opt in to AFT New Mexico's Rapid Text program to stay updated on the news from your union and from the educators serving our communities. Let's begin our call by hearing from Senate Majority Leader Peter Wirth and New Mexico Senate's vision for public education, labor issues, and workers' rights. Senator Peter Wirth represents Senate District 25, based in Santa Fe, and prior to his service in the Senate, he was a member of the New Mexico House of Representatives. He serves both on the Conservation and Judicial Committees. Welcome, Senate Majority Leader Peter Wirth.
Thank you, Stephanie, and hi, everyone out there. What a fantastic opportunity to visit with all of you and give you a sense of where we are and kind of where we're going. I have to start first, though, by just giving a huge shout-out to AFT for all the work that was done in this election cycle. Even though the Senate wasn't up for election, I can tell you the feeling of optimism and excitement with the changes our governor-elect and Speaker Egoff will certainly preview the different world that he has in the State House of Representatives. It finally gives us a chance to start digging ourselves out of the hole that we've been stuck in. And I'll just say we couldn't be more proud to be there doing that with all of you. And the work that AFT did to put us in this position is incredibly appreciated. So I just wanted to start with that. Also, kind of having all the stars align here, we're in a situation where we have money. You know, after some incredibly challenging years that we all went through together, where we literally were fighting for the status quo, where status quo was a win, a terrible place to be, and we had to make cuts that we hated doing. We're now in a position to do some big, big steps, and we're going to talk about that tonight. You know, I want to start on the Senate side by giving a shout-out to our senators who've been working so hard on the education issues and putting together a plan that you're going to see certainly K-12 and higher ed roll out when our Legislative Finance Committee budget rolls out in the early part of January. Both Senator Mimi Stewart and Senator Bill Souls have played instrumental roles and are playing instrumental roles in what that's going to look like. Obviously, not obviously, but Senator Stewart is chairing the Legislative Education Study Committee and working with Senator Souls on that committee, the other House members that Speaker Egoff will talk about. And the LESC this year has been working with the Legislative Finance Committee in a way I've not seen in 15 years. And so, as the leader in the Senate, when I have the chair of LESC and the chair of Senate Education, Senator Bill Souls, engaged to this level with Senator Smith and the Senate Finance Committee and expressing a sense of excitement about what's coming, that is incredibly satisfying to me and should be good news for all of us. Obviously, the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit in the K-12 and early childhood arena has really changed the parameters that we're working in, and I think the solutions that you're going to see rolled out and that the LESC has been working on with Senate Finance are going to be a huge step forward and something we can all be proud of. It's such a big change for our state to finally invest in early childhood, to make these policy changes that have needed to have been done for all these years, that, again, I think it's something that's going to take several years for that to happen, but I am very optimistic about the work that has been done to date. Let me also say that this is going to be a session to address, as you mentioned, Stephanie, labor, workers' rights. We finally need to get a minimum wage increase on the books. The Speaker and I were just visiting about that, and I think that, again, that's something that is a priority in this chamber and a priority in the State House, and it's a priority of the governor-elect. We've got a governor who wants to work with us, and that is such an exciting thing and a huge change from where we've been for the last 8 years. So I think you're going to see a lot of work done on minimum wage. We've heard around the state the challenges that have been faced with this local right to work and these ordinances that are there. I know there's going to be legislation coming forward on that issue to address that. It's terribly unfair at the last minute for labor to have to go out and fight these local ordinances that are coming one by one. And so that's something that's certainly a priority for us in the Senate. We've managed to put the statewide right to work discussion, I think, firmly to bed. So it doesn't mean we won't see a bill, but that's not going to go anywhere, and that's a really, really important thing. Just to kind of put this all in perspective, we've got a lot of money coming from one source, oil and gas, and it's going to be critical for us to diversify our economy. I also think that as we move forward, we need to make sure that the recurring dollars that we're using to build this educational change that we're working on is sustainable. The last thing we want to do is be back in a position where we're having to cut. And so because of that, another thing that's getting a lot of discussion, and we spent some time today and in the tax committee Monday and Tuesday, is doing a tax reform package that can focus on recurring dollars and making sure that our revenue is not just the roller coaster of oil and gas. So that is also out there as well as kind of one of the big items. We are feeling extremely good about where we are in this state, and I'll just wind up my remarks before I hand this over to Speaker Egoff by again saying thank you to all of you, everyone that works in education at every level, in the classroom, outside the classroom, higher ed, early childhood, all the way through. Really, you all are heroes for what you're doing for our kids. And we don't say thank you enough to all of you, and that's been something that we've had to deal with, this landscape of attacks on the education community, the testing, all of that stuff. I am just so enthusiastic about moving forward and the new day, really, for our state. Education is absolutely critical for us moving forward, and I'm thrilled to be part of a Senate that's going to be working there, again, with Senator Stewart, Senator Souls, Senator Smith. The team that we have in place, I think, is going to deliver, and I'm thrilled to have all of you up here and be able to work with you on it. So Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, everyone out there on AFT. And we'll be here listening in. Let me hand it over to the Speaker of the House, Ryan Egoff.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank Stephanie Lee and her team and all the members of AFT. I really do join Leader Worth in saying a big thank you to all of the members of AFT throughout the state who not only helped us win back the House in 2016, but expanded to the largest majority in the State House of Representatives since 1992. It is an incredible achievement. We would not have been able to do it without you, and we are grateful beyond words for all of your hard work, helping to put in place legislators representing you that value education and value your profession and the contributions you make every day to improving the lives of our children all over New Mexico. As we come into the session, Leader Worth is correct. The leaders in the Senate have been working closely with leaders in the House, with education champions like Cheryl Williams Stapleton and Christine Trujillo, Andres Romero, and putting together a plan to implement what Governor-elect Lujan Grisham discussed during the campaign, which is an education moonshot. It's a once-in-a-generation, if not multiple-generation opportunity to work to save a generation of New Mexico's children from poverty. That effort starts in the classroom by giving all of our kids a world-class education, by giving substantial pay increases to our hardworking teachers and educational employees. It starts with increasing minimum teacher salaries. It starts with making sure that teachers have the freedom to teach, that they're not overburdened with unnecessary testing. It starts with making investments of hundreds of millions of dollars more every year in K-12 education, early childhood education, and higher ed. Higher ed, of all of the cuts to the state budget, almost half of those cuts came out of the budgets of our institutions of higher learning. And we've got a lot of work to do to start restoring those cuts and making sure that our universities' tuitions remain low for the students that are graduating from our state's high schools. That's very important to all of us in the legislature. We want to make sure that we do everything that we can to lift up educators, to help them assume the role that they have and that they deserve in our society as respected professionals whose job is among the most important we ask anyone in our society to do, which is not just take care of our children, but to make sure that they get the tools and the education that they need to succeed in the future. As Leader Worth said, the stars are aligning. We have a big new majority in the House. We have a great majority and leadership team in the Senate. And we have Governor Lujan Grisham, who's making education her top priority for her administration in this next session in the legislature. I want you to know that Leader Worth and I, as Speaker, both have an open-door policy, and we love to hear from teachers, and we love when your AFT representatives are here working with us, working with our members, and working with staff to make sure that you're holding us accountable for education policy reform, for a solution to the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit. It's not just funding, as we all know. A lot of the things we need to do to address that court decision are policy reforms, dealing with English language learners, Indian language learners, multicultural education, and all of those topics are going to also be absolutely front burner issues for us in the Senate and the House Education Committee. I want to wrap up just by saying that Leader Worth and I and all of us in the legislature know that every day when you go to work, you make a difference in the lives of your students and in the lives of your colleagues. And we appreciate it in ways that exceed our ability to express our gratitude. So you are the heroes of our state. Please keep up the good work. You know that with hard work you get good results. And that was the election, and now hopefully with our work we'll produce a lot of great results for you and the schools throughout New Mexico. And again, thank you for being on the call. And Stephanie, we're looking forward to listening to the conversation ahead.
Great. Thank you to Senate Majority Leader Wirth and Speaker of the House Egolf for your leadership and partnership for our New Mexico workers and educators. It does really take a team to move things forward, so we're really excited with the new day. And thank you for sharing some of your educational goals for this session. As we transition to the next part of the call, I would like to remind listeners to press 1 now to opt into our rapid texting program, and also submit any questions for the candidates by emailing AFT Tele-town Hall, AFT NM Tele-town Hall at gmail.com. Again, AFT NM Tele-town Hall at gmail.com. On the next portion of the call, which will be a series of issues and questions that have been submitted by rank and file members from across the state. I will read the question and provide a little bit of background about the issue, and then invite other legislators to address and answer your questions. The first question is regarding community schools, and we will ask Representative Liz Thompson to respond, but first I will read. My name is Dwayne from Albuquerque. I'm a teacher in Albuquerque, and every day I see students in my classroom who come to school without the proper support in order for them to be successful, lifelong learners. I know there are schools dubbed community schools, which are set up to provide wraparound supports like counseling, health needs, and other services for both students and parents in my district. How can we pursue a community school model for more of our schools in APS as well as statewide, especially since the U.S. Department of Education has approved using community school models as interventions for Title I schools? So Representative Liz Thompson.
Thank you, Stephanie. So community schools represent one of the most positive changes to happen in the U.S. education in decades. I truly believe that community schools have the potential to change the future for so many of our children who come to school, especially those who face challenges related to poverty. And you are right, Title I dollars can be used to support community schools, but we can do more in Santa Fe to support schools that want to do this work and become community schools. This session, I plan to introduce legislation that would require New Mexico's public education to use Title I funds to support school districts in implementing a community school, Title I funds to support school districts in implementing a community schools model. The legislation I'm fighting for would pave the way for New Mexico to also increase the amount of state dollars and resources that go to community schools. Community schools have proven to be a cost-effective way of connecting students to the help they need to succeed. We all know that learning when you're hungry, you need health care, or any other number of supports is nearly impossible. So we need to deal with those needs first. An authentic community school is defined by 4 characteristics, and those are integrated student supports like counseling, healthcare services, and dental care that help meet critical student needs. And I will also be introducing another bill to bring funding for school-based health centers back up to pre-recession levels. Number 2 is collaborative leadership and practice that's an integral part of a community school, and we cannot overlook that. Having teachers, principals, and community representatives engaged in the school leadership and consistently reassessing results enables a community school to respond to new challenges in a way that's nimble and effective. Number 3, expanded learning time and opportunities like internships, career and technical education coursework, or after-school tutoring are a significant part of community schools and enable our kids to get the most out of their education. Number 4, active family and community engagement define a community school by setting its tone and defining its culture. When you walk into a community school, families feel welcomed and like their opinions and needs count. Without family and community engagement, community schools Community schools have a track record of success in New Mexico and throughout the country. They increase attendance, math and reading scores, English language learner outcomes, and higher high school graduation rates. Community schools are the best mechanism out there to make sure children get the support that they need, and that's all the support they need. It's time that we get serious in Santa Fe about dramatically increasing the number of community schools throughout our state. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Representative Liz Thompson. Our next question comes from a classified employee at Gadsden Independent School District, and that is Linda Castaneda. Her question is, I am a classified employee in the Gadsden Independent School District, and I love my job. I always knew that working with kids was what I wanted to do with my life, but that passion has made it hard to provide for my family while I'm educating others' children. Many classified educational employees still qualify for assistance, even though we're working full-time jobs. Pay isn't much better for teachers and college professors, especially when you consider the demands of the job and the added responsibilities. I have seen many good educators leave the profession because of low wages, and it puts an additional pressure on those of us still in the profession. Given the talk about the expected surplus, what plan does the legislature have to ensure educators earning a living wage in order to work one job and be able to support their families? And we'll have Representative Christine.
Hello?
You may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda, for your very good question. I've been involved in trying to advocate for increases in educator wages for educators and educational employees for many, many years. I think that with the comments that our Speaker of the House and our leader in the Senate, they've already stated that there's a push for and support of increases in salaries for all educators across the board. I'm going to be carrying legislation that specifically addresses the increases for classified school employees, raising the minimum wage to $16 an hour, and of course the cost of living increase as well. I'm hoping that sends a message that they're valuable and integral parts of New Mexico's public schools. We have vacancies in all K-12 positions. So we're making sure that there's legislation in place that's going to be available to recruit and retain our classified educators. And that truly is important because we need to respect what you do, and that involves increasing your wages. That also includes the increases for wages for early childhood educators. We feel that classroom teachers are extremely important, but they don't do their jobs alone. I think classified employees, educational assistants, and all the other players in the school system are people who augment and support the successes of classroom teachers. We also recognize that in higher ed, adjunct and tenured faculty at higher education facilities have been the victims of the brunt of cuts from the Martinez administration, and they have unfortunately been hit hard by the fact that she's vetoed several of the proposed increases. Nevertheless, we are trying to make sure that they receive a higher and more sustainable wage. We hope that we can stop the bleeding of adjunct professors out of our colleges and universities, and we hope that we can make their wages just more competitive because it helps our students succeed. We also recognize that a higher wage means a more stable ERB fund, and with those higher contributions from employee contributions, what will happen is that we'll have a sustainable pool of money for future retirees. Higher wages means more educators in our classrooms at all levels, and therefore better service for our students, their families, and the communities in which we live and work. It's critical that when we give across-the-board wage increases to people who open the doors, and not just the people in the classroom, but everyone who helps sustain a school atmosphere, a school environment, a positive one, we all benefit, especially the kids. Thank you, Stephanie, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Representative Trujillo. Our next question comes from Billy Heelan, an elementary educator in Rio Rancho Public Schools. And her question is, in my district, Rio Rancho, access to quality early childhood education is the exception, not the rule. We often hear about how critical it is for our youngest learners to have access to education, but it seems like there has been little movement on the issue despite a large amount of lip service. If using a portion of the permanent fund isn't a viable option, what will the legislature do to expand and fund access to early education before another generation of students lose out on this critical stage in their education? And this we will ask Senator Bill Soules to answer. Senator?
Good evening. Yes, Stephanie. Good evening. It's wonderful to be with you all, and thank you to AFT for hosting this town hall on education. I think everybody will see that education is going to be the premier topic of this legislature. There is money, and we've got a real commitment from the new administration coming in and the legislature to do something good for education. The particular question that Ms. Helena indicated deals with early childhood education. And early childhood education is the foundation that we build everything else on. And we know that it is the best place to invest any of our education dollars. Some of the things that I think people will see is a real commitment to improving what we're doing in early childhood. First, we're going to be expanding some of the programs that are already in place. We've had a limited amount of schools that have qualified for K-3+, and it's now going to move to where it's going to be K-5+ for Title I schools, and that money, instead of being below the line and a pet project of the PED, it will be part of the SEG funding that all schools who qualify will get the funding for it, rather than being on a basis where each school applies to be selected. All of them who qualify will be able to access those funds. That's a big increase for those schools. And K-5+, for those who may not know, is an increase of approximately 20 school days for those students. We know that having those students, having them with the same teacher, improves their outcomes and those students that need it the most. On the other side, the early childhood education and having students in high quality early childhood there is substantial increase in funding going to be going for those programs. Lots of that is still to be worked out exactly how that's going to look, and some of that will be the prerogative of the new administration coming in. Michelle Lujan Grisham, our new governor, has indicated that she is planning on putting in something that looks like a children's cabinet, to where the funds for early childhood education, which are currently scattered across at least 3 different departments, the public ed department, CYFD, and public health departments, will have all of those agencies working together to make sure that we get the best early childhood education that we can for our children. Every child in New Mexico deserves being in high quality early childhood programs, and currently they're only available in some communities. It will be a major lift. It's a major challenge, and it's not going to all happen this year, but we are going to start on that process because we know it's the best place to invest in our future of the state is to invest in the youngest children and make sure they come to school ready to learn. That means every child should be in high-quality early childhood programs, and we're working to ensure that that happens. It's going to be rolled out this year, but it's going to be several years in the making as we do that. I know the new governor coming in is in support of tapping into the permanent fund. Some of the politics within the legislature, that still is very controversial and may not happen. But right now, and for the foreseeable future, a few years out anyhow, we do have the money to fund it through other mechanisms, and we may need to make sure we're making that investment in our future.
Thank you very much, Senator. And Senator, we're going to actually ask you to answer the next question as well, and I will read that.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
This question comes from Whitney Holland, who's an elementary educator in our Los Alamos Public Schools. I'm a veteran teacher, and I have seen more quality educators leave the profession in the last few years than ever before. These colleagues are leaving well before they need to retire, and many of them simply are leaving because of the current evaluation system. There's a lot to cover in this issue, but I want to make it clear that teachers want to be evaluated. We always want to improve our work and effectiveness, but the important part of any evaluation is that it's fair and I can learn from it. I recently read a report from New Mexico State University that said 50% of all teachers wouldn't recommend someone entering this field as a profession, and that scares me because it means that more and more classrooms will be filled with long-term substitutes. This hurts our students, plain and simple. What plan does the legislature have to fix this problem and give confidence to the classroom teachers that the state values their efforts and wants to support them in becoming better educators? And again, Senator Soules will ask you to answer that.
Thank you, Stephanie, and I really appreciate the question. I am a partially retired teacher. I still teach 2 classes, and I see firsthand the hard work that teachers are doing every single day in the classroom. But I also recognize the morale problems that we have in our schools and that have just been made worse over the last 8 years of this past administration. I believe that the new administration coming in values teachers, values the contribution they make to our society, and the teachers will really start to see and feel that from the very first day of this administration. There are already plans for changing the evaluation system. As I've talked to teachers, the teachers like the part of New Mexico Teach where they actually are interacting with somebody who has observed their classroom and who makes real suggestions about how to be a better teacher. However, the parts of the evaluation that require teachers' score to be based on how their students score on a test that is taken one day does nothing more than just sort the teachers into those who teach at the affluent schools and those who teach at the poverty schools. And that's not fair, and that's demoralizing to our teachers. We can do better than that. It's been said that there's no way we are going to fire our way to a better teaching corps. We're going to build a better teaching corps through professional development, through evaluation systems that make every teacher a better teacher by giving professional development and by valuing what they do every day. Along with that, we also are going to need to build our teacher corps, and the way we need to do that is through programs like Educator Rising that gets people into the profession early. We're going to improve the teacher corps and the people coming in and retain teachers through increased salaries that value them as professionals and pay them as for the professionals that they are. There are quite a number of things that all are going to have their fingers into this. I have been very, very concerned with the deprofessionalization that we have had from the last administration, and I think people are going to very rapidly see both a new view of teachers as important to the work and to the building of the future of New Mexico. I think you're going to see teachers are going to feel that they are valued both through their paychecks, through the evaluation system, through the rhetoric that comes out of this administration and out of this legislature. We have to have teachers who care about kids. We need to have it as a viable profession. We need to support the teachers. We need to support our public schools, because New Mexico is now on the cusp of seeing real changes and real positive changes for the betterment. And every teacher I know has at the core that they want their children to do well. But we need to make sure we treat our teachers well so that they can treat our children well.
Thank you very much, Senator Soules. Our next question comes from Donna Tudeberg, who is a school social worker for Albuquerque Public Schools. And she writes, I am a social worker and I am also a parent. I see the conditions that my children were confronted with when they went to school. Rampant testing, labeling, a lack of freedom in coursework, and a loss of creativity in their day to pursue educational topics that engage them in learning. I am definitely not alone when I say that as parents and educators, we are over-testing our children, not educating them, and it is harmful to their development. Does the legislature have any plans to give relief to our students and the teachers being forced to administer these tests? And we will ask Representative Andres Romero, who is also a teacher, to answer this question.
Great. Thank you so much for that question. And I want to say to everybody listening, happy winter break to all my fellow teachers. We just have one more day, but after that, we'll have a nice long break and be able to recharge for the next semester. And thank you for everything that you do for our students. I think this administration has been particularly reliant on testing. That's all we've seen from the public education department as a way to try to measure students and measure teachers, which has been a real problem, and it's been a problem since I was first elected to the legislature 5 years ago. Then I sponsored legislation to get rid of some of these testing redundancies that had kind of piled on top of one another in this race to assess students and measure teachers and keep them as they saw accountable. But I think this question ties nicely with what Senator Soules was just discussing, that I think one way to lessen the teaching burden is working on teacher evaluation. You know, it had been 50% of a teacher's evaluation, how their students did on this test that was administered during this period of time, that would turn out, in a lot of cases, pretty chaotic. And the testing has gone from 50% to 35%. I think by bringing that even farther down to a more reasonable level in a teacher evaluation system will help lessen that load for teachers, to where teachers can start being free in their classroom, free to work on lessons that they feel appropriate and lessons that they've been trained to do. I think it also ties in nicely with the last question with professional development and offering professional development for teachers that would like to expand their classroom or experiment with things in their classroom in order to learn new techniques and not be afraid to incorporate those new techniques into their classroom. I think this lessening the amount of testing on teacher evaluations will go a long way. I think another thing that definitely needs reform that the legislature is working on is the school grading system. The fact that these tests carry so much weight in labeling schools from one another and separating schools, saying that these schools are bad schools and these schools are good schools based on just these test scores. So I think reforming the school grading system to one that's more supportive of schools that may need the help getting the resources to where they need to be going will go a long way in lightening that testing load for students. I think it's all about being able to free teachers up, giving them the supports that they need to succeed in the classroom, and having them not be afraid to experiment, to work with their students in new and interesting ways, I think can only be a benefit to teachers and students alike in this state.
Thank you, Representative. Our last question for the evening comes from Sarah Adelson, who is a librarian at Albuquerque Public Schools. And she writes, I'm an educator, and I have seen many promising students come through my classroom who expressed an interest in attending college, but also going into the teaching profession. This gives me hope for the future of our profession. Where I'm concerned is that the college tuition goes up, and wages have largely become stagnant. Fewer and fewer potential college students are able to pay for it and incur extreme debt in order to earn their degree. I recently read that nationally, student debt is $1.5 trillion. That is a huge number. As the value of the lottery scholarship goes down, the student debt is going up. Are there ways to attract and retain potential educators through debt forgiveness or improving the ways that the lottery scholarships are distributed? And answering this question will be Representative Debbie Sarignana. Representative?
Hello, Sarah. Thank you, Stephanie. And hello, Sarah, and thank you for your question. And thank you, AFT New Mexico, for putting this Tele-town Hall on. So, yes, student debt is a problem, and we have a few ways to help in this area. First, I'm going to start out with the lottery scholarship. You're correct. The value of the lottery scholarship is going down. And we have a couple of lottery scholarship bills being carried this year. I'm actually carrying a lottery scholarship bill that is a needs-based scholarship. The bill is based on the student's FAFSA score. It's based upon the expected family contribution, and I tried this last year, but it didn't really go too far. And this bill will ensure that students and families with modest income are eligible for the scholarship while excluding high-income, high family contribution students. So hopefully this will get us going in the right direction with the lottery scholarship, because it is limited, and we do have to focus on those who need it. As far as loan debt, we have been studying this in our Legislative Education Study Committee. The Higher Education Department offers 2 financial aid programs for College of Education students to lower the student loan debt. The first one is the Loan for Service program. It forgives the loan if students become a teacher in the shortage area. And as we went around, this summer we went around to a whole bunch of rural areas in the state, and we listened to them tell us about all the problems they had in getting teachers. So this is one way to bring teachers to those areas, and that one was a Loan for Service program. The second loan is a loan repayment program, and it pays off the student loans of licensed teachers who work at least 2 years at a school with a D or F grade. And funding for both of these programs has fallen short over the past 4 years, but we are looking at fully funding the forgiveness programs, and we understand that this needs to be done, and we will work on this coming session. Education is a priority, as you've heard so far, and this is something that we can do. This is something that has to be done for our teachers, our new teachers coming in. There's also a program at that the University of New Mexico has implemented. It is a teacher residency program to pull college graduates with degrees outside of education into teaching careers. The graduates spend a year in the classroom with high-quality teachers and receive a $20,000 stipend. However, the program is limited 24 students. And right now it's currently being piloted at Emerson, Van Buren, and Highland, and it's working. So this is just another way to alleviate the cost of becoming a teacher. We will continue to fight this battle for all of those who wish to become teachers. I'm a teacher. I'm a high school teacher. I teach at Manzano High School, and I know we need teachers, and we have to look at even more programs in this as the years go on. But hopefully the lottery scholarship, the loan repayment programs will help get more people in and alleviate the debt of becoming a teacher. I think that's it. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Representative. I'd like to take the time to thank each of you who spent some of their time with us this evening, and thank our elected officials for prioritizing this call within their very busy schedules. We have an opportunity in New Mexico to really change the path of public education after the last 8 years. And we have heard ideas that will not only improve our profession, but most importantly, improve learning conditions and outcomes for our students, their families, and our communities. I encourage you to be involved during the legislative session and to be a champion for public education, from early education through higher education in New Mexico. I appreciate the hard work each of you provide on a daily basis that benefits our students and places of learning and communities. At the conclusion of this call, we encourage you to stay on the line to be able to give immediate feedback about the conversation we just had. We look forward to hearing from each of you, so please make sure to stay on the line and give feedback. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great night.